And welcome back, fourth and long fans. It's your footy correspondent, Coach Donnie Hess here, back with another episode of my Aussie supporter series. And ladies and gentlemen, I will be very, very honest with you. This is a chat I have been super looking forward to. The reason that I listen to Chicks Talking Footy, that is Miss Beck Dahl coming all the way from Melbourne, Australia. Beck, how are you doing?
I'm great, Donnie. I'm just as excited to be here. I feel like this has been a long time in the making.
I chatted with Fee a little bit online, and I told her to let you know that you were the reason that I got into Chicks Talking Footy. I've enjoyed my friendship with all of the ladies in Chicks Talking Footy, including a couple that have featured in this particular series as well. So I kind of like to know just a little bit about the people that I'm chatting with outside of the game of footy. Yes, we're here to talk footy, but let's find out a little bit outside of the game of footy. So if you want just a real quick bio of who you are.
Yeah, so I am a 40-year-old woman. I live in Melbourne. I grew up in South Australia, which is another state of Australia, but I've been in Melbourne for about 12 years. And when I'm not talking about footy, I'm a partner in a law firm during the day. I'm a divorce lawyer. So yeah, bit of an interesting job I do when I'm not watching footy.
Oh boy, that's got to be a fun daily job for sure, especially in COVID times, unfortunately.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
All right.
absolutely.
Well, you know what? Let's get into it. We're here to talk a little footy. I always love these transatlantic conversations with Australians. They're so much fun. So I got to ask this. This is my a favorite question of mine. What is your favorite thing about the sport of football?
Oh, that's such a good question. There's so many things. I think what I love about it, I mean, I love the game. Like I love watching the game, but what I really love about it is the connection that it gives with people. So my family and my friends and talking about it and, going for the same team or not going for the same team. That's what I really love about it. It's a real kind of it's the community that you build around it and the interaction you can have with people as much as the actual ball getting kicked around.
Yeah, it's amazing. And being an American, I think a lot of them, it's for me, it's the excitement of the game because it's so different. It's not something you see very often. It's such a unique game. It throws in parts of rugby. It throws in almost part of volleyball with the handball, the rugby tackling. It's this great amalgamation of several sports. So it's just really, really cool. Let's stay in the past just a tiny bit. Can you remember your earliest footballing memory?
Yeah, I can. And it's actually a great story, I think. I love footy. My dad got me into footy when I was very little. Like I don't remember not having it on, but I remember being about 8 years old, I think, and dad took me to the grand final, the SANFL, which is the state league in South Australia. And our team, West Adelaide, was playing South Adelaide. And I dressed up in this red and black rah-rah dress. It was the 80s, so very frilly dress, but it was the only red and black thing I had. So I had to wear the colours. And that game is very famous. If you look it up, it's called the Bloodbath. It was one of the worst games ever in terms of fights and blood and all these things. And I came home as an 8-year-old yelling out, Simsy, you mongrel. Sims was this player that played for the other team. And I'd been with my dad and his mates, and they taught me how to say, Simsy, you mongrel. And I came home, and my mum was just mortified. And she said to dad, I'll tell you that again if she comes home talking like that. Anyway, so it's quite a funny family story. And a few years ago, I was at a Adelaide Crows game with my mum and dad, and there was this guy sitting over in the corner of the bar. Dad said to me, do you know who that is? And I said, who? And he said, that's Simsy, you mongrel. And I went over to this old guy in the bar and we told him the story and he thought it was quite funny. But yeah, that's my earliest memory.
That's absolutely outstanding. And the funniest part is your mom gets mortified for mongrel. It's like there are far worse things that they
I
could have
was going to
taught
say,
you to
I
say.
think
So
Simsy, you mongrel is fine.
that's tame compared to some of the things you could probably some of the sprays he probably heard that day over the fence. So being a South Australian girl, I gotta ask, what's your club and why is it that you support them?
Yeah, so my club's the Adelaide Crows. So when I was younger, we didn't have a team in the AFL, which was the national competition, because I'm sure people probably know, started off as a Victorian competition, then expanded. So when I was younger, up until I was about I think 10, I was when the Crows came into the competition. I was an Essendon supporter because they were red and black, and that was the same colours as my state team. So you just sort of match the colours. But then I remember the Crows coming into the competition, and it was quite a big deal in the state because there was two organisations trying to get this national licence. There was Port Adelaide, who everyone knows now does have a team. And then there was, I forget what they called it. It wasn't conglomerate, but it was that sort of word, which was an organisation of all the other clubs. And that club became the Adelaide Crows. And effectively, Port Adelaide were hated in the SANFL. You're either a Port Adelaide supporter or you hate them. So all of us who weren't Port Adelaide supporters very much jumped on the Adelaide Crows in 1991 it was, when they came into the competition. So it was just a no-brainer that once there was a club from our state, we were 100% in.
That's awesome. So are the Crows now, since again they came in a little bit later than some of the other teams, is it a family love, or do you have any black sheep in the family that found their way to being Port supporters?
In my immediate family, absolute Crow supporters. Like you would just be, it wouldn't bear thinking, Donnie, to be honest. Like we even had a dog that was called Bickley, named after Mark Bickley, who was one of the early captains of the Crows. In my extended family, there are some Port supporters, but we don't really like to talk about them too much.
I chatted with a Port supporter yesterday.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Well, the funniest part about it is he's the only Port supporter in his entire family. His mother, his father, his brother are all Crows supporters. So it was the most interesting conversation ever, because he had joked about going to a game between Port and Geelong, and his brother, who is a Crow supporter, bought a Geelong jersey just to cheer against his brother. So it was, honestly, they're great stories.
I remember their Crows and Port have only played in one final. It was, I reckon it was the early 2000s. I can't quite remember. Anyway, what I can tell you was in the years where you still had to line up to buy tickets, like before they were on the internet. And I remember getting up at 4:00 in the morning or something and lining up outside the local newsagent. But what I remember was that I think the AFL and the government panicked that it was going to be like a soccer kind of riot. That's how much we hate each other. And they actually divided the crowd into sections and you had to buy in either the Crows or the Port section because they were scared about what would happen if we were all intermingled.
Yeah, that's insane. And I've seen some, like I watch European soccer myself, and some of the stuff that goes on there is insane. So I can see that, because there is a genuine oh man, how to say this nicely, a genuine dislike of each other. If we'll be nice about it. We won't go into
I was going to say that's polite. Yeah, absolutely.
We'll be polite. We'll be polite. I'm Switzerland in that argument. I think both clubs have a great history. Some more interesting than others. So, but we won't go into the essay argument there. So I got to ask this. Can you remember the first ever Crows item that you were given or bought?
Yeah, I can actually. So I grew up in Whyalla, which is in country South Australia. So it's about 4 hours from Adelaide. And I remember my great auntie Carmel. I was allowed to catch the bus from Whyalla to Adelaide. I reckon I was about 15. It was the first time I remember catching the bus by myself, and it was like an 8-hour bus trip, but she was going to take me to this Crows game at Adelaide Oval. And I remember I bought a flag before the game, a Crows flag, and I carried it like on that. I held it, I think, for that whole 6-hour bus trip. And yeah, that flag it's the first thing I remember buying, I think.
That's awesome. And at least you got it. You were like, I'm holding on to this. I am making sure that I have this when I get into the game. That's
right.
Fantastic. So I've told many of people, you wouldn't think so, but an American, I'm kind of a diehard when it comes to footy. I get up at 4 a.m. to watch my beloved Sydney Swans watch a game if I have to. I don't mind the sleep deprivation. So I consider myself a diehard fan, but I know everybody fans differently. Everybody supports differently. So I'd like, if you could really quickly, can you describe your support, or your fandom, as I call it, for the Adelaide Crows?
Yeah, I think I'm very passionate. When I was younger, I had this real habit that I used to give myself a migraine before the game because I would get so anxious and so stressed about what was going to happen. And my mum would have to be like, just Beck, it's okay. It's okay. And I've always, even now, if I go to football with my mum and dad, which I don't as often because I live interstate, but I've always sat in the middle of them. Like that's just always been, because I like to talk to my dad about the game and I like to talk to mum about, you know, things that are going on around. But I've always had this really bad leg shake and it drives them both mad because I sit there just shaking my leg.
Mhm.
I think I get more nervous than the players. I'm that kind of person. I'm very take it very seriously, and I think that somehow I can impact the outcome of the game.
You're one of those nervous Nellies that can't sit still.
Yeah.
There's somebody in every fan base that does that. They can't sit still. They think if they sit in the one seat one time and they win, they have to sit in that exact seat every time, and they have to wear the same thing. I'll admit I'm superstitious as all get out with my sports. If I wear something and they win, I will wear it until they lose. So
I have to
I
tell
know
you,
the
Donnie,
exact feeling.
I often go to the games over here with a couple of friends. They're guys that are from Adelaide as well and live in Melbourne, and we're all a bit like that. And I just remember this one really tight game. We're at the MCG and the Crows were behind, and it was my turn to go and get the beers. And I went, and I was coming back, and just the Crows kicked, I think, 2 goals while I was in the bar. And I come back with the beers, and I went to sit down. The boys were like, "Nope, back to the bar," and they made me sit in the bar for the rest of the quarter because they thought that that was somehow going to help us win.
I've seen that before too. The superstitious fan is absolutely fantastic. I love those stories are so much fun. Like I know those way too well. So I think you kind of already answered this, but I want to hear it again. Can you remember the first ever Crows game you attended?
I actually think it was the one Arnie Carmel took me to that I came down on the bus for. It's definitely the first one I remember. I remember it was against Hawthorn and it was hailing. And Tony Modra ran past me. I vividly remember that because I was madly in love with Tony Modra. But I think that was the first game, and that would have been in the first couple of seasons, I think. But because I was living in the country when they started, we didn't always get to go to as many games.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's not always easy. It's not like Melbourne now when it's so easy to get to the ground if they're going to be there. So I love this next question because I've heard this described as picking your favorite child. Picking your favorite child, it's never easy. Can you pick your favorite player of the past? And do you have a favorite player currently on the Crows list?
I think it is like choosing your favorite child. I think probably my favorite player of all time is Mark Rashido. I just loved him. He was like just a real tough guy, like really hard at the ball, real team player, really just went for it. Country bloke, had a mullet, like, you know, just a cool guy. I think now that he's on the board, I disagree vividly with a lot of things he's doing, but that's beside the point. And I think absolutely my favorite current player is Rory Sloane. I mean, how can you not love Rory Sloane? He is the world's most beautiful human. The fact that the Crows have had real problems with keeping players. Players don't want to live in Adelaide. It's a beautiful place, but it's not somewhere you want to live if you're a young footballer. And the fact that he was Victorian and signed to stay at the Crows was amazing. I've also Tex Walker's also really been one of my favourite players, but I don't know. Given what happened sort of at the end of this year with him and the racism issues, it's actually been really challenging to think how I feel about him. You know, people may or may not know, a few years ago, the Adelaide Crows coach was murdered by his son, and it was a really tragic kind of time in the club. And Phil Walsh, who was the coach, had made Taylor Walker the captain, and everyone was like, "What is he? He just wasn't someone we thought was going to be the captain." But when Walshy was killed and the club went through this tragic time, Tex just held that club together and held that group together like nothing else. And so it's actually really complicated now that he's had this quite public racism issue come out where he said something extremely racist. And, you know, it's been really challenging as a supporter and as a player I've always really loved and respected to kind of process how that feels to me now.
It's one of those, you feel bad, but you almost want to try to separate him from the football. The footballer is not the guy that made the like, you almost feel like you wish you could, because you're like, on the field, he's a great player, a heck of a player. He's fun to watch, but off the field, it's just something that it's just like you just kind of face palm. You're like, oh, I can't believe you said that. And the fact that he's played with Eddie Betts, who's dealt with all of that on the internet side, and the racial trolls and that, and some of the issues that the AFL has dealt with Western Australian and even Eddie Betts at Carlton, the racism issues. So it's very difficult. Like it did come out of nowhere. Like you would have thought Eddie Betts, you'd have thought with being around Eddie Betts and everything that he had to deal with, that somebody who's played with him for so many years wouldn't make that mistake. So it does kind of tinge him a little, which is sad.
It is sad. And there's no excuse for it. Like, there's no excuse for it in society generally, but AFL players are the most educated people on racism of any aspect of our society. I can't tell you how much the AFL gets involved with our Indigenous community, and the players are educated. We have whole rounds. So I don't think there's any excuse for racism, full stop. But for an AFL player who's been in that system for 15 years or whatever it is, I mean, yeah, it's unfathomable, really.
It's just super difficult to hear it. That, like I said, it's just super difficult to hear it. And it mars a great footballer's career.
Yeah,
big time.
It does.
There's just nothing you can get away from it. So let's pull ourselves out of the darkness.
Donnie, you touched a nerve there.
It is fun. Hey, I love these conversations. These conversations are great because I don't get these very often over here. Legitimately, honestly, I don't have a lot of footy heads that want to sit here and talk footy and talk about that type of stuff. For me, that is awesome. So I appreciate that you brought it up. So we'll go to the positives here. And I love asking this question. Most memorable moment as a Crows supporter?
Absolutely. The 1997 grand final, and the 1998, we won 2 back-to-back, but they were just, I can still feel how excited I was those days. And my family, again, we were living in the country, and this is like, it's unfathomable to think about now, but we had all these people around, and we decorated the house, and we bought out all the crepe paper, but we had so many people that they couldn't fit in our lounge room. And it was back in the days where you only had one TV. And I remember my mum and dad going to like radio rentals or something, and they hired a TV for the day so we could have 2 TVs awesome. Because we had so many people. And I just remember, like, after the game, everyone got in their cars and we're driving around town. And I remember the most exciting thing was then, the players did a tour of the state, and they came to Whyalla where I lived, and I've still got this t-shirt at mum and dad's. It was this premiership t-shirt, and I had all the autographs on the back. But those 2 days were just, nothing will compare to them, I don't think.
Yeah, winning a premiership, it's hard to find a moment that's better unless it's a personal moment. I've heard some really good
even then
moments.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, you'd be surprised what some people have answered. So, but I love it because it just shows you how people kind of cherish different things in different ways. So we go from that, such a great moment. And I don't mean it. We'll pull back a tiny bit to the sad part. We'll go to this last season. I know this was not a season that Adelaide would sit here and hang on their mantle as a season they were super proud of. But as a supporter, and I know you're very passionate, so I'm very interested. What were your thoughts on Adelaide Crow season this year?
Yeah, I get a bit of crap from my family and the girls on Chicks Talking Footy that I'm a bit of a Pollyanna. Like I say, I like to see the best in everything where football's concerned, and particularly the Crows. But I have to say, I actually came out of this season okay. Yeah, we didn't win a lot of games. We won more than we did the year before, but we have some just fantastic young players that are coming through that club. Like, it's not winning is shit and I hate it, but what I saw was some real young talent, and I also saw those players winning. Like, what I was worried about, because they won, I think, 6 games, something like that, which isn't a lot, but the year before, when we only won about 3 games, we had those young players still. And I was really worried that not winning was going to impact them, because I remember the first game we won last year, which was very late in the season. You know,
Hawthorne. Yep.
yes.
And I called that
They,
in my tipping episode. I called that. My host who went through it, he looked at me, he goes, "Are you sure?" I go, "Trust me, Adelaide's going to win this game." And the next week when he called me, he's like, "You called it." I'm like, "Yep." I said, Adelaide was playing better. Hawthorne was playing not as good. And I saw the same thing going into this year. I saw progression. Phil Thorpe coming in, I think played really, really well when he did play. I think he's going to be scary if he continues to progress the way he's going. And Rory Sloan plays a great season. Walker starts off the year really good, kind of fades a little bit, but I still think he had a pretty good year for him.
Oh my God, he played out of his skin the last few years, the first few weeks. I was really, it was like the Tex of old, you know, that would bash packs and take big marks. And and Ben Keys has become a real favorite of mine. He's really developed, you know, he came from Brisbane and they didn't want him. Like, they basically put him on the recycling pile and we went, oh yeah, we'll take him. And he's been great because our backline, you know, Daniel Tarley has been our backline sort of, you know, marshal for the last few years. And without him, you could see the whole thing was a bit of a debacle. But I'm actually really happy with where they're at. Like, I think we've still got a few years of pain to go through. But yeah, I'm mostly positive about it.
And there's nothing bad about that. And I think you have a lot of positive, like I said, you have a lot of youth players. You're going to get a good draft pick this year. And with the South Australians and West Australians getting a lot more footy than the Victorians, unfortunately, I think this is another good season for South and Western Australians to get drafted into the AFL. So there's a lot of things to look forward to. And the Crows are a team, I think they can go up. I don't see them sliding down, but I've said this in a few episodes. This season could be a gauntlet because I literally went through my head and I'm like, I can think of 10 teams right now, not even trying, that can all be finals teams without
I agree.
even
I think it's going to be a really interesting season. And the fact that we'll get a proper season too, you know, fingers crossed. The last two seasons have obviously been interrupted or changed or, you know, whatever. I think it's going to be really, really interesting.
It's going to be fun. So we'll stay with the positive. The off season has come and gone. The off season has come and gone before the draft, since we're recording this just before the draft. Free agency period is done, and sign and trade. So I got to ask, being a Swan supporter, how happy are you in Adelaide to get Jordan Dawson into the ranks?
Oh, so happy. I can't even tell you. I was so excited. I thought the deal would get done, but it just took like every day. I was like on the Twitter, is it done yet? Is it done yet? Is it done?
Me too. I got annoyed. I'm like, just somebody just give up and just give something a little bit, because both of these teams were really being stubborn. I think I understood both arguments. Adelaide, what do they really have to spend a lot to get Jordan Dawson when they've got the preseason rookie draft? I mean, they really had the advantage, but I understood Sydney. It's like Dawson, if I remember correctly, they put a 5-year contract in front of him because they wanted him to stay, and he wanted to go home. And I respect that. I mean, it's like a Lear going to Port last year. I know, evil Port. I know, but stay with me. This is the second straight year that a defender from Sydney, who I know the Swans fans have wanted to keep, moved on. But I've loved it that he's going somewhere he's going to be appreciated, and I think he's going to be very, very successful. You are going to love him either on the wing or in the back line, but I think he's going to be in the back line because you've got Seedsman and you've got Keys, so exactly. So you've got some nice rotation in your wing position there for the Crows. So if they can get out and run, they're going to be a fun team to watch when they go full steam. But I thought I'd ask that since you're the Crows supporter. I thought I want to see what she thinks of Dasso coming over there.
And also, it was absolutely worth it because the day that they signed it off, the Crows social media team did this fantastic Dawson's Creek sort of clip on their social media, which was worth it just for me.
Yeah, the play on words was absolutely. I remember seeing that. That was absolutely fantastic. So, I say this all the time. I'm never one to give expectations for years because I feel like it sets a weird pressure thing that I find fascinating. So I don't say like expectations. I think what I think might happen, but I don't expect it. So for you as a fan, do you have expectations on next season? And if not, kind of what are your thoughts on going into next year? Do you see an increase from 6 wins to 8 wins, maybe 10 wins? Who knows?
Yeah, I think that I'd like to see a few more wins, and I'd just like to see these young players develop more. I think we're not ready for the top 8 yet, but if we were sort of at the, 10th, 9th or 10th, I'd be pretty happy with that. I think that you got to be realistic. Like, we got a couple more seasons of development before we get to where we want to be. But look, like I say, if we had, sort of 10 wins and finish 10th, I'd be more than happy with that.
You'd be wrapped with that. And the best part is you can look at the competition and go, well, how has North Melbourne progressed? Hawthorn's probably going to take a dip this year, you'd think, but you never know. How does Collingwood handle all of more drama again this offseason? well, I know I saw social media yesterday when it went out in a couple of the episodes I interviewed yesterday. I asked them about it because it was very much the fun thing. I was like, the New York Times put something out about it, and it just made me laugh because I'm like, how many people that read the New York Times even know about Aussie rules football in the States? Like, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but it is kind of funny. I'm like, there's a lot of people that have no idea what the heck they're talking about or know the history to it. So I thought that was kind of funny. So my next question, I love this one. This is a lot of fun because so many people have just on this one. As an American, we love being the general manager. We like making decisions. We like changing things. We all like, well, this guy would work better if we could get him in here. So I like doing this with Australians. I'm going to install you as the list manager for the Adelaide Crows. All 17 teams that are not the Crows have open teams. You can pick up any player in the competition. Who's the first player that you bring into the Crows and why?
Oh, that's such a good question, Donnie.
Don't you love these?
Oh,
makes you think.
I want to say someone, like, I want to say Dusty Martin, I think, because I think what we don't have is someone that can turn the game on their own boot. Like, we've got a lot of good players, and like you say, people like Rory Laird and Seedsman and Sloan, and they're all great. Like, they're great players, but we don't have that person. There's players that just they turn the whole game and everyone follows. And I think Dusty's probably the master of that. So I think, I'd have Dusty Martin, I reckon.
Yeah, the Dusties, the Stringers, the Petracas, the Bontempellis, those guys that when they want to, they flip a switch and all of a sudden they become the most dangerous player on the entire field.
Well, Bont in the grand final, nearly turned that whole game himself. Didn't quite work, but
and then Petrarca and and Clary Oliver and Luke Jackson kind of they changed that.
Was a great game.
It was incredible. I streamed it we streamed the first 3 quarters on our Twitch channel that we have connected to the Fourth and Long. And I kept saying, this is an insane game of footy because it literally is the runs that footy is known for, the momentum, one change and everything can change on its hands. And think about Caleb Daniel throwing Max Gawn on the ground. And from that moment on, the Bulldogs scored 7 points. The Demons scored 100.
I know. It was one of the best grand finals I reckon I've watched in a while, actually.
And it was a blowout. And it wasn't even in the end, the margin was not any indication of how good that game was. I mean, it's not a 2005 Eagles Sydney, 2006 Eagles Sydney, Collingwood West Coast 2018, the draw in 2010. So, I mean, or like the 2009 grand final that was a 10-point win, but it was technically 4 before Scarlett kicks his goal. So it's like it's not those games where it's within a goal kick. 2012 Hawthorn Sydney was 10, but it was 4 before Malcheski kicks the one with like a minute and a half left. So those are the games that you think are the most memorable grand finals, not a 66-point shellacking.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it?
But it was such a great game because the skill was absolutely insane, and just the D's run was incredible to watch. I was so happy for it. So well, actually, this is a great transition. the grand final, the last 2 years has been outside of the hallowed halls of the MCG in Victoria. So, as an American, I kind of appreciated seeing the Super Bowl-ish style. Again, I know this is controversial for some Australians. Calm down, comment section for just a second. Outside of Australia, the Super Bowl is one of those things everybody wants to pay attention to. It's under the lights. You have the big time halftime show, and the previous 2 years have been the Gabba in Perth, and they were very well done. I appreciated them, though the 3 a.m. wake up wasn't always great for an American fan, but we'll reel it back in for a second. So now as somebody that lives in Melbourne, but is a South Australian girl, I got to ask this: if for some crazy reason the MCC contract is ripped up, would you be okay with a traveling grand final, or are you one of those, you like the tradition, MCG 2:30 grand final day?
Yeah, it's funny you say. I'm a bit of both. So I'm a traditionalist in life, and so I think the grand final should be at the MCG. And people are often surprised when I say that, because I'm not from Victoria, but I just think it's the home of football. It's where we all should play. But what I do love, and oh my god, the girls on Chicks Talking Footy have given me so much for this. I love the night grand final. I love it. I love that, you get the entertainment as the sun's sort of going down and that dusk. And I think if we had a night grand final at the MCG, it would be perfection. But I'm very much one out of the box there.
I've said this, and I know this has irked a lot of the Australians I've talked to. I said everything that I keep hearing, that the AFL has its way. The grand final will be a night grand final from now on, because the ratings were through the roof this year. Again, Victoria was in lockdown, so it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
But they've already said if they want to compete ratings wise with the NRL grand final, I know NRL grand final, not nearly as big as Aussie rules, they need a prime time 7 p.m. start to the game, and they're going to get these big numbers for the ratings. And if that's going to bring them more money, that's what they're going to do.
Well, that's right.
Tradition be
it's
damned.
It's a no-brainer, I think. So. Yeah, and look, I was going to mention the NRL Grand Final, because that's always been a Sunday night game, and it's always done well, and people are into it. And I just think, I think it's going to have to be at the MCG, because I think that MCC contract is, pretty tight.
It's not going anywhere.
No. But I think a night grand final is inevitable. And I think we've had 2 years to get used to it now. I know people they think, it's too long and it takes too long to get to it. I don't know, Donnie. I love a nap on a Saturday afternoon, so I'd probably just have a nap and then I'd be good to go by the time the game started.
Well, I'll tell you this though. One thing that I love about it is you guys at least put the AFL Grand Final on a Saturday, so you have Sunday to recover. That's the one thing us Americans didn't think about really well when we play in the Super Bowl is we do it on a Sunday. Well, we don't get a holiday on Monday, so if I have a lot of people going to work, shall we say, lubricated quite well occasionally, or they take the day off, which it's probably one of the most requested days off besides your holidays over here. So it's kind of funny for me that I got to give the kudos. You guys at least put your big game on Saturday night. You have Sunday to recover a little bit.
Exactly.
Enjoyed your team winning the grand final, or at least just enjoyed the game. In fact, I don't know, did Fee tell you the cool thing that I did up here for the grand final?
No.
I made homemade Australian Aussie meat pies.
Oh, amazing.
Yep. I will send you a pic after we're done in the on our IG, on our instant message that we have. But I made them for the grand final, made them in the afternoon, let them cool, put them in the warmer about 15 minutes before the granny, and then had one as we were streaming. It was
amazing.
Yeah, it was awesome. I had a few Australians reach out and go, "You were a bloody legend for this." One even said, "You deserve an Australian passport for this."
Love that. Did you have tomato sauce? Like, did you do it
we
properly?
have ketchup. Unfortunately, I don't have the tomato sauce version that you guys have. I have the ketchup. I thought it was really good. I didn't need it, but I know that's a controversial discussion sometimes.
That
with
is
some
a
people
controversial discussion.
Do you put the tomato sauce on it or do you don't? I didn't. I thought it was good without, but I'm I've got the pie pins. I'll make it again for sure. So I will definitely the next time put a little tomato sauce on in the middle and enjoy it with that. But it was fantastic. I enjoyed it. I will definitely be making those again. So I'll transition to this. This is going to be a fun conversation, especially for you. Being Chicks Talking Footy, you guys talk about the AFLW, and Fee knows this. I am a massive AFLW supporter. I do a weekly review of the AFLW, and I've said this in a few episodes. I am currently a foundation member for the Sydney Swans. I took a lot of pride in doing that and really wanted to do that for the girls. So I know you're a massive AFLW supporter. So what were your thoughts on the Crow season last year? I know you felt just a tiny bit short to the Brizzy Lions, but the Crows are one of the most decorated teams in AFLW.
I was going to say, like, it was interesting last year. Like, obviously, you know, you want to win the grand final, but I kind of thought, oh, look, we can't really be too greedy. Like, the competition's been around for, what is it, 6 seasons, and we won 2 of the grand finals. So I have to say I was good about it in a way that I probably wouldn't have been. Like, I wasn't when the men's team lost their grand final in 2017. I wasn't nice about that at all. But, you know, the joy that those girls have brought has just been fantastic. I think it's been the AFLW competition, amazing, but the Crows have been fantastic. You know, the fact that they got a record crowd at Adelaide Oval for their grand final, you know, the whole state's got behind them. The fact that Erin Phillips plays for us when her dad was a Port Adelaide legend just gives everyone so much joy. Yeah, look, I think, you know, I kind of think the AFLW is a new competition, and I'm a big one for, like, different teams winning, I think, in these early days, but probably come back to me in about 3 or 4 years, Donnie, and I would have got over that, and I'll be ready for another premiership.
Oh boy, yeah. I asked this question to the Port fan, and I only want to ask this because I know it's massive in South Australia. Is the fact that Erin Phillips' father was a Port legend. I'm gonna pick this just the tiniest bit, and I don't want to offend you. Would you be okay if Erin Phillips dons the Port jersey the first year of the Port Adelaide Crows, since her contract does end after this season?
No.
I knew that would be the answer. I had to ask. I'm one of those. I won't shock me if she does. I think she's staying on to play 1 year in the Port Guernsey. Again, I don't think it's anything against the Crows. I think she just wants that connection with her father, because I know everybody talked about her father being a legend in South Australian football, and she is a legend. There's no argument there. I've even thrown up the idea. I think the best and fairest should be the Erin Phillips Award, but whether that happens or not, we'll have to see. So, but I had to ask. It was
no, Donnie, but I'm a bit of a hopeless romantic about things, and there is some, like, I loved that Gary Ablett came back and finished his career at Geelong. And I think that even my little red, blue, and yellow heart would probably see the nice side of her, you know, playing a season for Port. We got 2 premierships out of her. You know, what can we can't really.
Hey, you could get a third this year. You never know.
That's true.
The way Adelaide is, you never know. They with as long as she's on the field. I said it in my AFLW reviews. It says if Erin Phillips is on the field, that's a game breaker for Adelaide.
I agree.
Every time.
They're lost when she's not there. Like, when she's been injured, they're like headless chooks. They don't know where to go.
Exactly. So I got a few more questions left, and these are some fun ones, because as I've told a lot of these Australian, eventually I am going to get down there. I want to go to a game, whether it's the MCG, the SCG. I have friends in Perth. I'd even love to get to South Australia to see the Adelaide Oval. It's a gorgeous facility. So I got to ask, when you go to the Footy, what's your favorite food that you like to enjoy when you go to the Footy?
I am I'm a fine connoisseur of the hot dog. I have firm views about hot dogs.
I remember this conversation.
Yeah, like there's an episode of Chicks Talking Footy where rather than talk about footy, I think a 30-minute diatribe on the crusty bread rolls because hot dogs are supposed to have soft bread rolls. I don't want to get into it again, Donnie. It's bring back bad memories.
It was hilarious. It was a great segment, though. I thought it was funny. It was absolutely outstanding.
Legitimately cut the roof of my mouth. See, it's all coming back to me now. So look, I love a hot dog as long as it's done properly, and I like to have sauce and mustard.
Awesome. Everybody, to each is their own. I know meat pie has been quite a popular one. I know I've had one. I interviewed Mikey, the huge fan of Chicks Talking Footy, and he's a bucket of chips because he's a vegan. So, and I said, hey, to each their own. As long as you enjoy yourself with the footy, that's all that matters. So, along with me getting down there, as I'm kind of gathering a base of, I asked this question: where do you think is the ideal place to sit and watch the footy?
Oh, see, this is a constant. My dad and I have had this fight for nearly 40 years. So I like to be the closer, the better. Like I like to hear bodies slapping on each other. I like to hear the players yelling. Whereas I've had this fight with my dad every time they come over here to visit me and I buy tickets. He's like, we can't see over the oval because it's like a bit of a slump. We're too close. He thinks you need to be up higher to see the whole game. Whereas I'm like, no, I want to be in there. Like if I can hear tackles, I know I'm at the football.
Yeah, and everybody's different. I know maybe it's a little bit of my coaching mind. I'd like to do one game at least up, say the second level, to where I can see the entire field, because I want to see the movement, because unfortunately in the US AFL, it is a little bit like girls soccer. It's everybody kind of follows the ball. So there's not as much structure in the game. I think it's we're getting some better coaching a little bit. So I think it's becoming a little more structured, but it does sometimes remind me of an 8-year-old girls soccer match. The ball goes and 20 players follow the ball. So it's
see, I've got this problem though, that when I'm at a Crows game, I only see the Crows. It's like my eyes, like after the game, you'll hear such and such from the other team got 40 possessions. I'm like, did they? I didn't even see them. Whereas if the Crows aren't playing, I can appreciate seeing the game as a whole. But if it's the Crows, I don't even know the other teams there.
It to each their own. Everybody fans differently. That's an awesome. I've never heard that. That's great though. That's absolutely fantastic. And this next question for me, I think you are the perfect candidate to answer this. Is the channel that I do these podcasts on YouTube is a massive one for American sports. They do NFL, they do NBA, they do Major League Baseball. But occasionally we'll get an American that'll click on our video because they're like, what is this Australian rules football? Hey, you'd be surprised how many Americans find the sport through random YouTube videos. So I thought it'd be a great idea that if somebody has sat down and they've listened to this awesome conversation, that maybe they don't have a team, and maybe you'd be a great opportunity to tell them why they should be an Adelaide Crows supporter. So if you want just a real quick pitch on why an American should be a Crows supporter.
I like that. I have to say a couple of things. One is, we don't have the longest history, so people don't hate us as much. We're kind of new, so there's a little bit of that. I think the fact that not a Victorian team is a bit different. Like it's a bit exciting, they're a bit different. I think, look, red, blue and yellow are really good colors. There's something for everyone there. And I think I have to say the Crows are just a bit non-offensive. Like they're, people don't hate them except for Port Adelaide supporters. And you know what? They're always going to keep you interested. They've never been consistently good. They've never been consistently bad. You genuinely don't know what you're going to get from them from one season to the next. And at least that keeps you interested.
Hey, that's a good one. And they've got an interesting history too. They've got some championships, but and a unique color scheme. I got to say that that's not something you see very often with the tricolors being so prominent. So I've always liked the Crows colors and the fact that they rock those stripes so well. I got to give the Crows that. They rock those stripes 100%. Fantastically. So my last question that I ask in each of and I love this one because I think it's fun to hear everybody's different ideas. What is your favorite game of footy that you have ever seen, whether it was live, whether it was on TV? It doesn't have to be a Crows game, but it can be. What's your favorite game of footy that you've ever seen?
That's such a great question. I think probably the best one I've ever been to was I've been to one Anzac Day game between Essendon and Collingwood, and
Mhm.
just that atmosphere, like it was probably the biggest crowd I've ever been in. You know, playing the last post, the moment silence. I actually don't even remember who won the game, to be honest, but I remember the atmosphere, and I think that there was just something really special about that game.
Yeah, that's always a good one too. But and did you ever get a chance to see a showdown live at the Adelaide Oval?
Yeah, I've been to heaps of, oh my God, I've been to some ugly ones too. Like I've been to some, oh, I remember getting yelled at by some Port supporters. Like they're pretty, it's
Feral.
actually, they're pretty feral. Like sometimes I'm embarrassed a bit for South Australia. I mean, it comes from passion, but
Mhm.
the hatred between those clubs, I mean, the hatred's so bad that a few years ago, the players got into a punch on at the pub after the game. So that's how much it means to people.
Well, the one thing I got to give though is it's passion.
Yeah.
There's the one thing American sports sometimes is almost seen as entertainment a lot of times. Like it doesn't get
Yeah.
serious until the playoffs for a lot of us over
Yeah.
here. So for me, it's kind of fun for me. I love seeing the passion and hearing the stories. Like when I talk to my West Coast supporter, my Frio supporter, how there's always a lot of tension between the two of them, though they kind of are isolated from a lot of the country because Perth is so far there, and then Port and Adelaide. Just I mean, there's very little give between the two of them. It's a love
Yeah.
hate relationship with primarily the hate part, and it's kind of fun. So for me, it's I love the rivalries. The rivalries are always fun. The Q
Yeah.
Clash, I'm surprised how fast the Q Clash has gotten super
Yeah.
intense. Like the Gold Coast and Brizzy, just their intensity, and then I've been happily pleasantly surprised GWS in Sydney has become it's not as big, say, as GWS and the Western Bulldogs currently, but I still think there's still some room for as GWS has a few more years into it that there's not going to be that little niggle between the two of them.
Yeah.
It's always
I
fun to
have to
watch the
say, it was
rivalry.
funny, Donnie, when I moved to Melbourne. I was so surprised that I would see like friends who go for different clubs, like walking to the game together. Because a
Mhm.
Crows and Port supporter, even if that, like, I've got very close friends that are Port supporters, but I would never go to a showdown with them because the tension and emotion would just be literally too much. And I just remember, like moving to Melbourne and seeing like an Essendon and a Collingwood supporter walking to the game together. I'm like, how do you do that? Like
Mhm.
it was an interesting phenomenon to me.
Yeah, and the other thing too, hopping into it is that the passion of the rivalries. I think sometimes I love it because that's the Geelong Hawthorn, the passion between the
Yeah.
two of them. Collingwood Carlton is absolutely insane. Sometimes seeing, I saw a YouTube video where they talked to Jaffa and just the way they describe Carlton, it's interesting. Like there's this visceral reaction
Yep.
that's it shows the passion that they have for the sport. So Beck, this has just been an awesome conversation. I have to say, I'll be very, very honest. This was one of the conversations I was really looking forward to because of the fact that you were the reason I got into Chicks Talking Footy, and I've enjoyed our friendship with Fee and talking with all the chicks. I think you guys are doing such a great job. Please keep up the great work, even if I may be the only person listening to Chicks Talking Footy here in the States, but you have a loyal fan. I listen to every episode. Keep up the great work. It's fantastic. I love that the lockdown is over so that you ladies can get into the studio and all be there because Zoom only gives you so much interaction. So I
Yeah.
always love the episode. So keep up the great work. It's fantastic. I thoroughly enjoy it.
Thank you so much, Donnie. Thank you for having me.
No problem at all. Ladies and gentlemen, this is another episode of my Aussie supporter series. I've got one more left to go. It's coming out very soon. We will talk to you again very soon, ladies and gentlemen, with another episode of my Aussie supporter series.